I quit my job, moved in with my in-laws, and began taking care of my handicapped father-in-law and doing all the housework. However, one day my husband left divorce papers in our home and disappeared. I continued living with my in-laws to take care of my father-in-law, but my mother-in-law just harassed me about it. My son threw you away, so we aren't even family anymore. How long do you plan on staying here? What? Seeing me flustered, my sister-in-law Flora began to laugh. Flora waved me away with her hands. Get out of here already, you leech! I had reached my limit. I couldn't take these people any longer. Fine, I'll leave. Less than a week later, my mother and sister-in-law visited me in a panic. My name is Hazel. I'm 32 years old and married. I met my husband Julio through work. He was a young and ambitious department head in one of my job's partner companies. There's a reason he could become department head even though he was only in his early 30s. That's because he worked for the real estate company his father ran. When Julio and I got engaged, he announced,
"If we're going to get married, let's move in with my family."
I thought we'd be living on our own, so I was surprised by this announcement. But Julio wouldn't back down from that idea.
"My family already decided. If we can't move in with them, they probably won't let us get married."
At the time, I was 29 years old. I was starting to feel that I'm at an age I need to get married, so I agreed to his condition. When I met his parents to announce our marriage and that we'd been moving in with them, Julio's father, Brent, looked at me with a worried expression.
"I'm happy you two are getting married, but are you really okay with moving in with us? And don't you two want to live as a couple?"
My father-in-law was being considerate of me, but the others shut him up real quick. What are you talking about? Julio is the eldest son, so this is natural. My mother-in-law Brenda replied quickly, looking down at me. My sister-in-law Flora, who was married but lived near her parents, also chimed in. That's right. In fact, she should be grateful that we're letting her do so. I get it now. So those are the two who came up with this rule. Like that, I ended up moving in with my in-laws after marrying my husband. My father-in-law ran a real estate company, and their family home was large and luxurious. Julio and I were given a room on the second floor of the house, and our married life began. Around that time, I was called over by my mother and sister-in-law. Hazel, today I will teach you some things every wife should know. Brenda reiterated this as my sister-in-law stood nearby with a stern look on her face. Some things every wife should know? A wife is supposed to work hard for her husband's sake. Please, don't forget that. Also, everything I say is absolute. You better listen to what I say. I nodded along to what my mother-in-law was saying, all the while getting a bad feeling in my stomach. On that note, from today on, you'll be doing all of the housework. I was shocked. Julio had told me his family has a housekeeper who takes care of everything around the house. So, I thought I could continue working like before, and I even told my bosses I would stay in the company even after getting married. I heard you have a housekeeper, I asked in a small voice, making Flora snicker. We got rid of her. We have you now, so there's no need for her. But I planned to continue working. My mother-in-law was a housewife, but I knew that I couldn't use that as an argument. What I said instantly put the two of them in a bad mood. That's so selfish of you. That's just an excuse to not to do housework, right? Yeah, it's been decided that you have to do the housework. Whether you continue to work or not, you better do all the chores. If you can't, just quit your job. I bit my lip hard. It's a job I've gone through a lot of training to do, and I want to keep at it for a long time. Quitting was the last thing on my mind. Okay, but please let me continue working. I will do my best around the house. Like that, I was put in charge of all the chores even though I worked full-time. Flora was married and not at our home most of the time, but I still had to take care of 4 people. Doing 4 people's worth of chores perfectly is incredibly hard. On top of working full-time, I had to make breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and do a ton of laundry, and clean their huge home. I would wake up at 4:30 a.m. every morning to do chores, go to work all day, and continue doing chores until I went to sleep. My days passed like that. If I let myself go even a little, my mother-in-law immediately complained, and Flora, who visited regularly, would also harass me. My father-in-law was at work most of the time, so he didn't seem to notice I was doing all the chores. But whenever I brought meals out to the table, he would always be sure to say,
"Thank you, Hazel."
I was able to hold myself back and continue working hard thanks to this kindness. Of course, at some point, I became exhausted and tried discussing this with Julio. "Hey, Julio, it's really hard on me doing all the housework by myself. Can't you help a bit?" Julio looked at me as if he couldn't believe what I was saying.
"Huh? Why would I? You're the wife, so that's only natural. If you can't manage it, just quit your job."
I was desperate. To think even Julio would say something like this, I began to think I had no one on my side. The first 2 years of our marriage passed like that. Then one day we suddenly got news that my father-in-law had collapsed at work. According to the doctor's diagnosis, my father-in-law had a stroke. Although he survived, the doctor said that he would definitely have after effects. Ultimately, he stepped down as a chairman of the board of his company, and Julio was suddenly named president. During that hectic period, we had a family meeting without my father-in-law.
"My dad is partially paralyzed and has a speech impediment, so he's going to need someone to take care of him."
When Julio said that, his mother and sister took deep breaths. But shortly after, they looked at each other and nodded. "Hazel should do it." Hearing them say that so simply, I was shocked. No way, I work full-time and have no idea how to care for someone. "Shut up!" Flora glared at me. "Housework, childcare, and taking care of relatives, that's obviously all the wife's job. You don't even have kids, so the least you can do is this." Her mother continued, "What Flora said is correct. You better take perfect care of my husband. So quit your job." No way. I looked at Julio for help, but he avoided my gaze and said,
"I leave it to you, Hazel. I want to focus on my job, so don't bother me."
At that point, there was nothing I could say. The next day, I submitted my resignation at work. My bosses were upset, but there was nothing I could do. My father-in-law was shocked to find out I was quitting my job to take care of him. He apologized by typing a message out on a tablet. "It's okay, don't worry." I tried my best to smile. From then on, I began taking care of Julio's father on top of doing all the housework. He could take care of himself more than I expected, so it wasn't that much work. He couldn't communicate using his voice, but he'd write out what he wanted to say using a tablet, so that wasn't a big problem. My in-laws were shocked when my father-in-law collapsed, but they didn't seem to have much interest in him after I began taking care of him. They never spoke about him. Naturally, I became closer to my father-in-law than before. He was always considerate of me, which made me want to become a source of strength for him. 6 months later, Julio was busy at work and didn't come home. Since becoming CEO, he had become incredibly busy, so I didn't think much of it. When I woke up the next morning, I found something unbelievable on the dining table. It was a set of signed divorce papers and a letter from Julio. This was the letter.
"I found someone I really want to be with, so I'm eloping. Don't look for me."
I felt like the sky was falling around me. Seeing how I had frozen in place, my father-in-law worriedly looked at me. When I showed the papers to him, he was also stunned. I later spoke to some people Julio was close with at work, and I found out that since Julio became CEO, he started a relationship with a young woman who worked at a bar near the office. She quit working at the bar the same day Julio disappeared, so the person Julio eloped with was definitely her. On top of that, when he eloped, Julio stole tens of thousands of dollars from the company. No one could get in touch with him. He had completely vanished. My father-in-law started working again, and I did my best to help as I dealt with the shock of what was going on. Julio had left behind divorce papers and eloped. When she found out, my mother-in-law said, "This is all your fault. Julio did this because you wouldn't break up with him." I was at a loss for words when my sister-in-law chimed in. "Well, it's only natural he'd want to be with a cute young woman instead of a decrepit old lady like Hazel. Not that I don't know how Julio feels." Did they really have to blame me for this too? When they left me alone, I began crying silently. My father-in-law appeared and patted my shoulder as I cried.
"Hazel, I have something to talk to you about."
He wrote on the tablet and looked at me seriously. Afterwards, he revealed it. 1 month later, I was still living with my in-laws. I decided to stay because I couldn't leave Brenda and Flora to take care of my father-in-law, and my father-in-law also wanted me to stay, but the two of them didn't seem very happy about it. One day, they stopped me as I was in the middle of doing chores. "Hey, Hazel, how long do you plan on staying here?" "Huh?" "Well, Julio still isn't back, and someone needs to take care of his father." Flora sneered. "Take care of? We can do that much. And Julio won't come back. He feels nothing for you anymore." My mother-in-law continued to glare at me. "My son threw you away, so we aren't even family anymore. How long do you plan on staying here?" "What?" Seeing me flustered, my sister-in-law Flora began to laugh. Flora waved me away with her hands. "Get out of here already, you leech. If you're after Dad's money, you won't get any of it." I had reached my limit. I couldn't take these people any longer. I then noticed my father-in-law, who had appeared in the hallway without me realizing. My sister-in-law and mother-in-law didn't seem to have noticed. He nodded to me lightly, and I announced, "Fine, I'll leave." The two of them grinned. "You were thrown away by your husband and don't have a job. How do you plan on surviving?" "How miserable. Go live alone in a rundown apartment." I ignored them, packed my bags, and left the house. I thanked my father-in-law before I left. 1 week later, I got a call from my ex-mother-in-law. "Hey, Hazel, where are you?" "I'm in my new apartment." She annoyingly pressed me to tell her the address, and eventually I did. A few hours later, my ex-in-laws, including father-in-law in a wheelchair, appeared at my home. "What's this? Why are you living in this fancy building?" That's right, I was living in a single-person flat in a newly built luxury apartment building. Brenda and Flora were astonished to learn that. I spoke to them coldly. "So why are you here? You even brought Brent." "He told me he's going to divorce me. He told me he's selling the house, so I should leave." Brenda said this with a pale face, and Flora continued, "Dad told us to go to you for the details, so we came here. What in the world is going on?" I let out a sigh as I looked at their pale faces. "I see. So it was time." My father-in-law looked at me and nodded. Seeing that, I turned to Brenda and Flora. "Brenda, Flora, you took advantage of the fact Brent is an invalid and took money from his bank account without permission, right?" The two turned even more blue-faced than before. "How do you... Dad wasn't supposed to know." "You never took care of him or even cared enough to check up on him. You seemed to think he's no longer mentally present, but he's just as sharp as he used to be. He just can't speak. So he even has clear proof of what you've done. And proof of something else as well. Julio's mother said, "Of something else?" My father-in-law pulled out his tablet and began playing a recording of his wife's voice. "His life is over, huh? Come on. If it's tough on him, he should say something. Though he can't. Taking care of him is such a hassle. I want his money, so I wish he'd just give it to us already." I couldn't stand hearing that. My ex-mother-in-law's face looked increasingly sick. After discussing things with him, I began recording your conversations. Since you've gone this far, the lawyer said getting a divorce should be easy. "The lawyer?" Per his request, I took Brent to a lawyer's office. He's decided he's definitely going to divorce you. Brenda's knees collapsed beneath her. Flora tried to attack me. "What did you do? We put you in charge of Dad." I calmly replied, "Flora, you're just as guilty. I found out how you used the $30,000 you took from your father's account." Brent thought it was strange that his daughter would take money from him since her husband was wealthy, so we hired a private investigator to look into things. We discovered that she was having an affair with a married man, and that her lover's wife had found out. The money was spent on paying compensation to Flora's lover's wife. Hearing that, Flora began to shake. "You really?" "Yeah, we told your husband too. I'm sure he's looking at all the evidence just about now." Brenda and Flora completely broke down. My father-in-law took out the tablet again, where the following was written.
"After finding out what you did to Hazel, I stopped loving you. I'm cutting off ties with you. I'm selling the house, so get out."
"Selling the house?" I explained everything. He decided to use the money he gets from the house in addition to his savings to move into a high-class care home. He asked for my help, and I did all the paperwork already. You should leave the house soon. And by the way, he gave me this apartment as an apology and even introduced me to my current job. So I have no issues now. I wonder who of us here is going to be living a lonely life in a rundown apartment. When I finished, my ex-mother and sister-in-law became distraught and started ranting, but we chased them away mercilessly. Afterwards, Julio's parents officially got divorced. Flora also got divorced around the same time, so the two began living together in a shabby apartment. Those two have never worked a day in their lives, so I don't know how they'll survive. Julio returned after. Julio's partner left him once he had no money, and he wanted us to make things work again. Of course, I chased him away. We reported him to the police for stealing money from the company, so he's in prison now. It's karma. I hope he reflects on himself while he's in prison. On the other hand, I'm living a good life in my luxury apartment, and I'm working hard at the job that Julio's father introduced me to. My father-in-law made friends at his care home and seems to be having fun. Thankful to my father-in-law, I plan on living a happy and bright life from now on.